Hello drummers, welcome to Tim Conley Drums. Today we're just going to talk about something that is a commonly asked question that I get, and discussion opens up a discussion, and that is chops versus groove. And I think that both are important. It's very important to be able to have facility and orchestration around the drum kit. Some of my favorite drummers are chops wizards, Dave Weckl, Vinny Colaiuta, Steve Smith. These guys have chops coming out the yin yang and they can play like there's no tomorrow. But ultimately, what gets you work as a musician is not chops. Chops are great, but I think that there's too much emphasis on chops. Technique is very, very important. Developing your technique, I believe, is more important than chops, because technique can also be translated to groove. So if you have good technique, you can then have a good, solid groove. So meter, groove, musicality, feel, all of that can be developed with good technique. Now, chops is a whole different thing, like gospel chops and all the crazy drum fills at ridiculous speeds and rhythmic gymnastics around the drum kit. While they are entertaining to watch and they are fun and I enjoy it myself, but ultimately nobody actually cares, because you can't dance to that. The ultimate thing is being able to groove. That's the most important thing on these drums. And I know that if you look at my channel, and some of you that have been subscribed to me for quite some time, you know that I do focus a lot on technique, singles, doubles, paradiddles, flams, rhythmic rudiments, all that stuff. I do focus on that a lot. I'm not denying it. But I focus on it to try and develop groove first, musicality second, and chops way down the road. I really don't care too much about chops. I'm going to be totally honest. Because, like I said earlier, and I'm going to explain more and develop on this, it doesn't get you the job. When you show up for an audition and you're handed, 6 songs, let's say. Standard audition is usually 6 songs that you have to play with a band. If you go in there and you chops your way through that and you overplay, they're not going to want you. But if you underplay, stick to the groove, play with good feel, play with good time, you're going to get hired every time. That's been my experience. Every time that I've ever auditioned for a band, if I overplayed, I didn't get the job. But if I played what was meant for the song and meant for the musicality that's required for the song and for the band, then I always got the job. Now, I only made the mistake of going in and trying to show off a couple times, and then I grew up musically. And I realized that nobody cares. Your band members don't care either. Can you lay down a solid groove with a rhythm guitar player and a bass player? The keyboard player and the guitar player, can they play melodies against, over top, around, etc., against that rhythm section? Rhythm player, bass player, drummer. That's all they care about. Can a singer sing over top of your groove and you not get in the way by playing too much chops and too many drum fills? Now, here's another thing I always teach to my students. What is the purpose of a drum fill? Why do you play a drum fill? Well, in most cases, a drum fill is used to separate parts of a song. So if you have an intro, you play your intro groove, whatever it is, and then from that intro, you might play a lead-out drum fill that leads to the first verse. Then you're in the verse. You then play a drum fill in that verse, usually at the end, not always, but usually at the end of the verse, that then leads you either into another verse, a chorus, you could go to a bridge, a solo, whatever. Same thing goes for the rest of the tune. Every time you go to a different section, so from, let's say, pre-chorus to chorus, you're going to do a drum fill to set that up. That's what we do as drummers. We set up sections. That's the ultimate goal of the drum fills. Now, sometimes you'll have a groove that has fills inside of the groove. That's a different thing. That's groove with fills and or phrasing that is a groove. That's different. You don't want to overdo your chops and be playing drum fills all over the place unless it's required. I mean, if you're playing in a band that requires you to play a lot of drum fills, then do it. But most of the time, when people are dancing and they want to hear music that they can dance to, it's usually groove oriented. So as Steve Gadd said, you know, you can have all the chops in the world, but if you don't have groove, no bills are going to get paid. And he's 100% correct. Groove is everything. You've got to develop your groove. Spend more time, young drummers and developing drummers. Heed my words. This will get you the gig every time. Stick to learning grooves and phrasing with the grooves and getting your time down so that you don't speed up, you don't slow down, the singer doesn't get frustrated with you because of that. Develop your time, develop your feel, your musicality, so that when you do play a drum fill, it's musical, it works, everybody's happy, and it's in the appropriate part of the song. So, I've said a lot here today, but it's just annoys me so much focus on chops. I mean, I see all these develop your chops videos on YouTube and gospel chops, how to develop your gospel chops. Well, I just don't see it personally. And in my experience, which is a vast experience of playing in hundreds of bands and hundreds of recordings in my life, it's almost always the groove. Same thing with recording. Producers hire guys. You want to get a job as a studio musician? You have to play grooves. The greatest drummers are the groove players in the studio. Hal Blaine, even though he had awesome chops too, don't get me wrong, Hal could play. But ultimately, the greatest studio guys are always the groove guys. Steve Jordan, Bernard Purdy, Kenny Aronoff, John J.R. Robinson. These are the guys that get the most studio work. Matt Chamberlain. They get the most studio work because their groove is killer. It's in the pocket. Jeff Beccaro, greatest groove drummer in my opinion of all time, is Jeff Beccaro. He had some great fills, but I never heard him overplay ever once. His groove was so fantastic. Another fantastic groove player is Jonathan Sugarfoot Moffett. Unbelievable groove, and he just lays it down in the pocket. A song that always comes to mind for an incredible groove of Jonathan's is Wanna Be Startin' Something by Michael Jackson. If you're not familiar with that song, you got to check it out. It's off the Thriller album, which came out in 1983. It's been around a long time, but the groove is killer. And you got to check out Jonathan playing it live, too, because Michael speeds it up live, and I don't know how the hell they play that song as fast as they do live. I actually prefer the tempo of the record more so than the way they played it live, but still, Jonathan, he's got a bunch of videos on Drumeo as well, playing these songs in the studio in Drumeo, and his groove is so tight. You know, the funk guys, Dennis Chambers, also a guy that's got killer chops, but listen to his groove. David Garibaldi, listen to his groove. You know, check these guys out. Check out the groove guys, because that's what's going to get you the work. I know I'm a broken record here, but I can't tell you how many times I've had students want to learn how to do these crazy drum fills, and it's great, it's fun, but ultimately groove is where it's at, people. So on that note, keep drumming, keep grooving. See you soon. Take care.